Now, when Sweden and Finland have formally applied to join NATO alliance, Turkey and Croatia. People are talking more about Turkey but less about Croatia. These two players and these two NATO members are opposing their entries. Now we will look at all the points. First, look at what Finland and Sweden they bring to table. So if you look at both of these countries, they check in all the required boxes for becoming a NATO member. Both bring a lot on the table. They fulfill the strategic goals of NATO and the Western Alliance in the Northern Europe and also in the Arctic region. Both of these countries joined European Union in 1995, and since then they have been partnering, though they were not a member of the alliance, but they had been partnering with NATO and West closely. And if you look at their military capabilities are very much interoperable with those of the Western Hemisphere or the NATO countries. So, if you add both these countries in NATO, then the entire security map of Europe, particularly in the Northern Europe, will be redrawn. So they bring a lot. Then, when it comes to technology and military, we should not forget that Sweden produces some of the most edge cutting technology when it comes to weapons. And Finland is also checking in most of the boxes. Plus, Finland actually is having 1300 kilometers of border with Russia. So, if you look from the Western perspective, then these two countries, addition of these two countries under the fold of NATO brings a lot on the table of NATO. So I think there needs a conversation, and there will be conversation between these two countries, other partners of NATO, as well as between Turkey and Croatia. And I think those demands of Turkey primarily, but also of Croatia, will be addressed. Though Croatia's demands are somewhat different than that of Turkey, because the demands of Turkey has to be addressed by both of these countries. Whereas the demands of Croatia has to be addressed by the European Union, European Council, and European Community collectively. So that is something not easy to achieve. Now, let me first talk about Turkey. Why Turkey is objecting? See, we should not forget that Turkey believes the PKK, the Kurdish Workers' Party, that group as a terrorist organization. They call it as a terrorist organization, and they are having a long term, if decades old conflict with those people who want to carve out a separate country called Kurdistan, not only from Turkey, but some parts from Syria, some parts from Iraq, and also some parts from Iran. So I always maintain one thing, that this is something really impossible to carve out of a country from four nation states. So Turkey considers them as terror outfits. And we should not forget that in 2019, I think that time it was 17th anniversary of NATO formation. And before those meetings and functions there in London, Turkey tried its best that all the NATO members must recognize PKK as a terror outfit. But they failed that time. But this time, I think some of their demands will be met. Why? Because right now, Turkey is on a very geopolitically sweet spot. because Turkey, the geographical location of Turkey becomes very important for the Western alliance, that is NATO, vis-a-vis Russia. And Turkey is also the second largest military contributor of NATO. So, right now, it is in the national interest of all these 30 NATO countries, almost 30 NATO countries, to address Turkey's demands. And there are something around 30 PKK members who have taken refuge in Sweden. There are some political elements in both of these countries. Not everybody, but there are few political elements in these countries who have some sympathy for PPK and their members. And 30 or 33 of PPK people who are wanted in Turkey, they have taken refuge, particularly in Sweden. So Turkey want them back. They are talking in their own national interest, and any country will talk in their own national interest. Plus, there are some sanctions by the European Union countries on Turkey. They want that those sanctions should also be waived and ended up. And I think these two demands somewhat, not everything, but somewhat Turkey will gain, especially when it comes to uh, those sanctions, especially on their defense industry, and something will be done, some peak of the support of Sweden and Finland to PKK and their operatives will be mellowed down, if not ended thoroughly. Now, coming to Croatia, tiny Croatia, it is also a NATO ally, NATO country, and their demand is that in Bosnia Herzegovina, the NATO and European countries must ensure that Croats, the native Croats, the racially Croats, they get more of political representation and political say. See, Bosnia Herzegovina is also one very complicated countries of the world, and both Bosnia Herzegovina as well as Croatia, they were carved out from the nation of Yugoslavia when there was the fallout of USSR in those times. Uh, so, if you go to the demographics of Bosnia Herzegovina, 50.5 are Bosniaks and they are Bosniak Muslims. Then around 30% or 32% are Serbs, and I think most of them are Orthodox, and about 18% are Croats. So even within the Christian community, that is Croats and Serbs, there are different type of Catholic or Protestant plus Orthodox Christians. So it's a very complicated country, very heterogeneous mix of races, actually races, religion, history. So there are complications in the world of race, religion, history, politics, and Bosnia Herzegovina in that part of the world has all those complications. So you can understand how complicated part of world that Bosnia Herzegovina and the adjoining region are. So their demand is that Croats must get more political representation, political importance in the country of Bosnia Herzegovina, and they demand that because some countries of Europe, especially Germany, has a lot of say there, a lot of influence there. So they want that these European countries must do something for them, but it is nothing to do directly with Finland and Sweden. So I think that these demands will be difficult to meet, but some of the demands, not everything, but some of the demands of Turkey will be met. And I think these two countries, that is Finland and Sweden, will be a part of NATO very soon. Now, looking at the Russian perspective, Russia was doing all these things. This whole Ukraine crisis came because they were not wanting NATO on their doorsteps. Now, more than Ukraine, it is Finland. Finland shares a border of 1,300 kilometers with Russia. So it is almost the doorstep. It is basically the doorstep of Russia where NATO will reach. And there is in war there is something called as exhaustion by war. I'm not saying that Russia right now is exhausted by war, but Russian troops are not showing very good performance in the battle zone. So if Russia gets exhausted by war, then you can think that the floodgates of NATO will open, and then not only Finland and Sweden, but there are possibilities even Georgia or even Moldova or even Austria may join the fold of NATO. So we must not be surprised. But when these things happen to a superpower, then there are always chances that they may react dangerously because that is an existential crisis for any superpower. Then the nuclear option or nuclear havoc may come on table, and I am afraid of that because humanity doesn't want any other nuclear war or nuclear disaster. So I wish that these things doesn't happen, but we can't ignore the fact. But I think that right now we are looking at the hinge of history turning because even the states which were non-partisan in the global affairs like Finland, like Sweden, they are also becoming partisan and joining military camps. So history is turning and we are witnessing that shift in the history. Now I'm leaving an open question for interpretations. I'm leaving something for interpretation to you. The 2008 Bucharest summit of NATO welcomed the aspirations of Georgia and Ukraine to join the NATO alliance, and it was met by Russia by attack on Georgia. At the June 2021 Brussels summit, NATO leaders reiterated the decision taken at the 2008 Bucharest summit that Ukraine would become a member of the alliance. And after that came the Russian attack on Ukraine. Now, interpret it and also comment. Thank you.